The service of a grain of wheat. In John chapter 12, verse 24, Jesus uses the metaphor of a grain of wheat to reveal a principle of life and service through death. He compares himself to a grain of wheat that must die to produce many seeds, referring to his own death and resurrection that brings salvation. True believers are also likened to wheat, possessing a life that can nourish others, unlike false believers, as outlined in the parable from Matthew chapter 13, verses 24 to 30. But what does it mean for the wheat to die? The death here is not physical, but the breaking of its outer shell. This shell represents the old, sinful self. If the shell remains intact, the life inside is restrained, and the Christian remains just a single seed, unable to grow or bear fruit. Jesus then speaks of loving versus hating one's life. The life mentioned in John chapter 12, verse 25, refers to the old self, contrasted with the new, spiritual life from God, received through being born again, as described in John chapter 1, verses 12 to 13, and chapter 3, verse 5. To hate one's life means to reject the sinful nature, allowing the new life to grow and be preserved for eternity. What is this shell that hinders spiritual growth? It is the old self. For example, pride leads to a lack of teachability and stunts growth. Jealousy causes resentment, as seen in King Saul's attitude toward David. The desire for vanity and power promotes hypocrisy and a quest for status. To break this shell, one must follow Jesus' example of humility and obedience, even to death on a cross, as described in Philippians chapter 2, verses 6 to 8. Consider the examples of those whose shells were broken. Moses was broken of his pride in the wilderness until he became very humble, as Numbers chapter 12, verse 3 describes, making him usable by God. Paul was transformed from a violent persecutor, as told in Acts chapter 9 and chapter 22, into a nurturing Christ-like figure who could write with the love of a father, as in 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 14, or a mother, as in 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 7. True service to Christ, as found in John chapter 12, verse 26, involves following him on the daily path of the cross. As the believer's old life is broken, the new life within grows, producing spiritual fruit. Paul describes this dynamic saying, "Death is at work in us, but life is at work in you." From 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 12. This is the service of life. The salvation through Christ's cross not only saves from eternal death, but also delivers believers from the power of sin in the present. It is a divine enablement, not human effort, that allows Christians to live out the good works which God prepared in advance for them to do, as written in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10.